Hi there. So in this video, we're going to do some practice with the externalities graphs because they're a little bit tricky sometimes, and we'll make sure that we're doing everything we need to here. So for each of these, we have to label MSB, MPC, MSC, all the M's, right? The QM, PM, the Q opt, P opt, and shade in that deadweight loss. So we're going to start with just a negative externality. So this is just kind of a refresher from what we did in the previous video. So we start with supply and demand. And what we'll say for both of these is you always just start off with the marginal private cost and the marginal private benefit, because that's really all supply and demand are. But we know that that's going to tell us the QM and the PM, right? So that we kind of do that already. That's normal stuff. This is a negative externality, so there's an external cost. There's an extra cost associated with this. And so it's going to shift that MPC up by the amount of that external cost. And so that gets us the marginal social cost, right? Because we know kind of the area in between is the marginal external cost. We don't have to label that part, but that's there. And we also know that there isn't an external benefit, so this is just the MSB curve. Now we have the P opt and the Q opt, and we should see the optimal price and quantity are less quantity, higher price. And we remember that the arrow points toward the optimal, right? So we have this little arrowhead that shades for our deadweight loss. Okay, now let's go ahead and do the positive externality over here. QP, start with demand, supply. We know that that's the marginal private cost. This is the marginal private benefit, and that this tells us QM and PM. Now, in this one, we know that there's an extra benefit, and so we're going to shift this demand curve up, right, to this level of a social benefit. And we know that that's kind of the extra benefit that's shifting it up. We know that there's not an external cost, so they're just the same up here. Social and private are the same. We've got our optimal point, and so society would be better off if we had Q opt, and the way to induce that amount would be to have a higher price for this product. And so we can shade here pointing toward the optimal, right? Pointing toward the optimal. Now we have to figure out whether these are going to be negative or positive, but generally speaking, they're usually not too difficult. So we're going to start the same way every time, and we'll kind of label MPB, MPC, QM, PM. And at this point, we should be able to say a chemical firm produces water pollution. That is an external cost, right? So we have a second curve up here, MSC, and a optimal quantity, Q opt, and an optimal price, P opt. And we know that the arrowhead points toward the optimal. So it's going to look just the same as the one above it. Oh, and we have to add MSB down here as well. Okay, vaccines lead to herd immunity. I gave that one away in the previous lecture. Darn, I should be better about which examples I use. But you have this kind of demand curve and a supply curve. And really, if you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just drawing the same graph over and over again, you are. I designed it that way because otherwise you're not going to get good at this. Like, you have to practice. That's how this works, you know. You don't get good if you don't practice. And so you've got private benefit, private cost, PM, QM, and it gives this extra benefit. So we expect there to be another curve, MSB, and it's shifted up by the MEB. You have an optimal quantity and an optimal price. And so now we know where the deadweight loss is. Okay, and last two here, an airport produces noise pollution. Again, usually they're pretty obvious, like what it is in terms of negative or positive. So this one, negative, right? Shouldn't be too hard. MPB, MPC, marginal private cost, marginal private benefit, telling us QM and PM. And if there's an extra cost, this second curve up here, MSC, Q opt, and P opt, and then you just shade in that deadweight loss. Okay. And the last one, City 4th of July fireworks are enjoyed by everybody. I think I've left off some of these social ones, so let me go back actually. That's the social cost. This is the marginal social benefit. Yeah, I did. Did I leave it off? Nope, I did that one. Okay. Q, P, demand, supply, marginal private cost, marginal private benefit, QM, PM, and if they're enjoyed by everybody, that means there's an extra benefit. So we have marginal social benefit. So the optimal quantity of fireworks is larger. More fireworks. I sound like a pyro. I should probably edit that part out, but I'm not going to. Okay, and I think that does us here. We get the Q opt, the P opt, the QM, the PM, the deadweight losses. We're all good. Hopefully that helped you. See you next time.